there's a young lady. There's a young lady. There's a young lady. In fact, the young girl, she reminds me of my little sister. She reminds me of Shekiah. Shekiah, she loves to sleep. When she goes to sleep at night, she has to have a little small light to go to sleep. Shekiah will not sleep at night without having her little light. Whatever it is, it could be Dora Explorer, it can be Little Mermaid. Whatever the issue is, she has to have her little light. And I wondered how come Shekiah had to have her little light. And the story goes that there was a little girl. She was afraid of the dark. This little girl was so afraid of the dark. She could not sleep without her night light. Her daddy went to her one night and said, baby, why do you need this night light? This whole room is dark. That little bitty light does not do anything for your room. It's still dark in here. The little girl said, Daddy, when I sleep at night, sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night, and when I wake up in the middle of the night, as long as I can see that little night light, I can make it through the rest of the night. And I came to tell somebody up under the sound of my voice that as long as you have a little light in your life, you can sleep peacefully at night. As long as you know Jesus is right there with you, you can sleep peacefully. As long as you know that I am is right in the valley with you, what you worrying about? My nana would say, God stays up all night. What's the use of you staying up with him? For he never sleeps, nor does he slumber. And if God is there, you have nothing to worry about. Look at somebody and say, do you have your night light? So we see the reality in this text. But secondly, we see the response. Somebody say the response. Here it is. David responds to reality with an imperative exclamatory statement. He says, I will fear no evil. Let me tell you, child of God, that life is not about situations, but life is about how you respond to your situations. Because just because, hear me now, just because you're in the valley does not mean you have to speak valley. Just because you're from the ghetto does not mean you have to speak. I came to talk to some young person this morning. Just because you're repping Bankhead and College Park does not mean you got to talk from whence you come from. But whenever God has something inside of you, you got to make up in your mind that I am bigger than my valley. I'm stronger than my valley. I have more influence than my valley. And just because it takes my body, it will not take my mind. And as a matter of fact, it won't take my mind, but it sure won't take my voice. That's why you should never hold back giving God praise. That's why you should never hold back lifting up your voice, because deliverance lies in your mouth. Deliverance is not in your hand claps. Deliverance is not in your foot taps, but deliverance is in your mouth. And the reason why many of you all are still in the valley this morning is because you have a closed mouth. You have not because you ask not. Jesus says, ask anything in my name and it shall be given unto you. And you got to learn how to open up your mouth. What will be your response? How will you respond to death in your family? How will you respond to your children getting pregnant out of wedlock? How will you respond to you getting put off your job? How will you respond to your house being put on foreclosure? Look at somebody and say, what will be your response? He says, David says, I cannot fear any evil because it's all in my response. Notice here, child of God, that the Komodo dragon can grow up to 10 feet tall. The Komodo dragon can grow to 10 feet tall and weigh about 150 pounds. It has strong jaws and teeth that are similar to the sharks. But notice here that all because, not because the 10 feet tallness, not because he's 150 pounds, not from his teeth, but the Komodo dragon has poison in his mouth. So many people who die from combat from the Komodo dragon do not die from his power. They do not die from how big he is, but they die from what's in his mouth. I came to tell somebody this morning that you're dying because your mouth is full of poison. Your mouth is full of depression. You continue to speak valley. You continue to say that you're broke. You continue to say that you're crazy. You continue to say that you're not beautiful. But I need somebody in here to understand. You got to wake up in the morning, look yourself in the mirror and say, I'm a mountain mover and not a valley participant. God has called me for greatness. There's greatness inside of me. There's a millionaire inside of me. My children will be blessed. My husband will be blessed. My wife will be blessed. They talk about waking up in the morning and put your swag on. You got to put your mountain swag on. Wake up in the morning and tell yourself, yes, I'm fresh. I'm fresh with the anointing, and this valley won't get me. Look at somebody and say, what will be your response? He says you got to do this because when you reconstruct your response, you're able to stand boldly and say, oh death, where is thy sting? Oh grave, where is thy victory? You got to change your response. We see the reality. We see the response. But lastly, we see the reminder. Somebody say the reminder. Here it is, David. He moves from I will fear no evil to for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Understand that David reminds himself that God is in the valley with him. He says, God, you're with me. Here it is, God. If God is omnipresent, if God is who he says he is, he has to be in the valley with you. You got to remind yourself, because understand, child of God, that the valley produces echoes. Whenever you are in the valley, you are able to produce an echo. So whatever you say into the atmosphere, it would eventually come back to you. That's why you got to be careful how you speak when you're in the valley, because that thing will come back to you. You got to speak life over yourself. You cannot spend time hating on people. You cannot spend time talking bad, but you got to spend that valley time speaking blessings over your life, telling yourself that you are bigger than this, and if God is for me, then who can be against me? You got to replace your stinking thinking with things like he would never leave me nor forsake me. You got to replace your stinking thinking with things like he will be with me always unto the ends of the earth. You got to replace your stinking thinking with things like nothing can separate me from the love of God. And when you know that Jesus is there, when you know that God is there, you have nothing to worry about. Look at somebody and say, what are you worried about? Harriet Tubman. We all know Harriet Tubman. She was one of the grand conductors for the Underground Railroad. In the Underground Railroad, Harriet Tubman was able to save many of slaves through the Underground Railroad. But Harriet Tubman's last public words were, in my career, I saved 1,000 slaves, but I would have saved thousands more if only they knew and would have said that they were slaves. There's some people in here, you've been enslaved by the valley mentality, and you do not even know that you're in the valley. You've been so brainwashed by the valley that you become comfortable with staying there. But I need somebody in here that will holler back at your boy and say, I'm bigger than my valley. I cannot stay here. I do not deserve to be here, but I am going up. If that's you, holler back at your boy and say, I know that's right.